Hello. If I'm wearing the same outfit from my last video, no I'm not. My name's Becky and I make videos about books and manga. Okay, mostly manga, but I am gonna try and do stuff more about books as well. So today I'm going to be talking about all the books I read in January, and I believe there was a lot of them. I did a lot of reading. Most of them were for my degree. Some of these were on my Kindle, so I think just for the sake of the entire video I'm just going to put a picture up here. So the first book that I read was a book called Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. So on my uni course I had to read 3 books and then pick a book that we want to do the essay on. Hamnet was one of those books. I gave Hamnet 2 stars out of 5. I was so bored. So Hamnet is based on Shakespeare's son, who was also called Hamlet, and about his play, but the book focuses on Shakespeare's wife, and for some reason she is called Agnes, even though that's not really her name. Her name was Anne Hathaway. But yeah, I got really annoyed with this book. For most of the book, Shakespeare is referred to as the playwright or the Latin tutor. He is alienated in the book, so we are focusing on Agnes. Agnes is this typical mad woman, and I just felt really bored throughout the book. It's just not something I would read. The one gripe that I had with one of the chapters was it explained how, she explained a whole chapter about where the pestilence came from. We know where the pestilence came from. You don't need to dedicate an entire chapter to how it got to the child. I felt like that was just a waste of time, and if I was an editor editing that book, I would have taken out the whole thing. I just did not enjoy it, so that's why I gave it 2 stars. This was not my thing. It's really boring. Everybody else in my course agreed with me. They didn't like it, so I'm not doing that book for my essay. I read Frieren Volume 7. So I was originally reading the manga and then I ended up watching the rest of the anime. So Volume 7 covers the rest of the exam arc, and I really love Frieren. I just think it really explores the themes of what happens when you've accomplished everything and you just carry on, and I just love Frieren as a character. And yeah, I feel like sometimes it can drag a little bit, but it's an adventure fantasy and it's just fun. I love reading it and I just think it's fun, and the world building that we've got going on is exciting, and we just see more of the characters' pasts, so I gave it 4 stars. Going back to the uni essay, this was the next book we had to read, which I am going to do my essay on because it's the only book that I could really kind of tolerate, and that is Grief is a Thing with Others by Max Porter, which I gave 3 stars. Now this book has won many awards, but I would not consider it a book because the way that it's stylized is between poetry and prose, so I wouldn't consider it a typical formative book. It's very experimental. Unfortunately, I feel like the experimental side really weighs it down. This man's wife dies and this crow comes to stay. And so the crow is the representation of grief, which is why it's called Grief is a Thing with Feathers. And the crow only leaves when man's son and the man accept the grief. So it does explore grief is a messy thing. Like, you've got obviously the 7 stages of grief, but grief is different for everybody. I think grief is something that is messy and chaotic, and I think the book does that really, really well. But in doing that, it is really hard to read. I feel like it's one of those books that you should only really read when you're grieving somebody, because a lot of the reviews I saw, they really liked it. Yeah, it doesn't work as a story, but it's more of a feeling. So I feel a lot of people were going through the same thing. So I do agree with it being chaotic. If you know anything about Ted Hughes and Sylvia Plath, it does reference Crow, which is one of Ted Hughes's books. I won't go into any more about that, but Ted Hughes and Sylvia Plath, very interesting poets. Please read up on what happened to Sylvia Plath and the person that Ted Hughes cheated on with. I'm just saying it's very strange. And then he publishes a book. It's weird, but yeah, I gave that one 3 stars. Then, because I needed a break from all the uni books, I read volume 8 of Frieren. Again, I gave this 4 stars because I can't get enough of this series. So they've entered through the Northern Plateau because Fern has got her first class. There's a bit of like glue before we get onto the next arc, which I'm excited for. It's just more fun and more magic, and I'm just really enjoying it. And then I won't go too much into detail because I've already done 2 videos on this. I then read volume 18 of One Piece, volume 19 and volume 20. And if you want to hear my thoughts, I will link the video of part 1 of the saga that I read, so I won't say any more, but I gave the 18 3 stars, 19 4 stars and volume 20 3 stars. I think it was a bit slow to start, but I did really enjoy volume 19 out of these. But yeah, if you want to go see my like thoughts and stuff, there's the first video. Then I finally finished The Burning God, which is the 3rd book in the Poppy War series. I have been listening to this on audiobook, so it's taken me ages because it is a big book, and I gave this 3 stars. Yeah, because R.F. Kuang really has a way of dragging you and your heart through the mud, and I will never stop thinking about that book series just because of what the topics it addresses. The best book in the series was The Dragon Republic, but I feel really conflicted with this book, and I can't really, even like a month later, I'm still trying to get my thoughts around it. It's just a very conflicting book series in total, especially with the morals of one of the main characters. If you ever want to read the series, go into it with a very open mind. Another uni book, which was The Order of the Day by Eric, I'm sorry, this is a French name, by Eric Folliard, which is a satire take on Hitler's rise to power, and it was very political. And there's a lot of context to take from this. I think I gave it 2 stars just because a lot of it was very political, which I agree with the satire. It's very hard to get through when your brain is like tired, and just I didn't have a fun time with it. I feel like if I was actually studying the subject, but I feel like for what we're doing in the essay, hard to read. It was like reading a history textbook, and I think if I'd known a bit before it, going into it, I would have tried to keep my head a bit more thingy. It was just hard to read. And again, I read some more One Piece, so again, I will link the second part of that video up there. And I read One Piece volume 21, which I gave 4 stars, volume 22, which I gave 4 stars, and then volume 23, which I also gave 4 stars. And I really enjoyed this second half of the arc more than I did the first, just because of the character building. But yeah, if you want to hear more of my thoughts, go watch that. I then read Afterlife by Gail Foreman, which I gave 3 stars. I just needed something quick and light after all the uni books, and all my life, this was an alright read. It was fairly cheesy and predictable, and you could see what was coming a mile away, but I feel like the main character learned a lesson. It wasn't terrible, but it wasn't great either. It was just one of those books where you know what's gonna happen. So yeah, 3 stars. I read Tatami Galaxy by Tomihiko Morami? Morami? My review I've put on here, I gave that 2 stars. I put on my review on Goodreads, I put, this felt like a whole load of nothing. Yeah, so the concept of this novel is that this teenager travels to different parallel universes, and half the time I did not know what was going on. I just couldn't get my head around what was going on half the time. It felt really random, and just, what? I probably won't be reading any novel by it again. I read this on the train a couple of weeks ago and I still can't get my... And then the last book that I read, and this was another uni book, was Disgrace by Jim M. Courtier. This won the Man Booker Prize. This won a lot of awards. I can get why it won awards. It's about... So this came out in 1999, and it's set after the apartheid that happened in South Africa. I didn't know a lot about, we're not really taught a lot about the apartheid, and so my lecturer actually went into detail about it, and I just cannot believe what segregation involving it. I feel disgusted by it, and yes, my own country is not great and we're not taught what we really should be taught, but it just disgusted me what people had to go through. I I feel like that also impacted a little bit the story, but for most of the story we are stuck in one of the most misogynistic, horrible main characters I have ever had the misfortune of reading. He was disgusting. He wanted, at one point I thought he wanted to do the deed with his daughter because that's what it was getting to. It was so weird. And there was also some racist implications with the main character. And I like unlikable protagonists, but it made me uncomfortable to read this book. And especially what happened to his daughter, which is why I gave it 3 stars. My knowledge is not what I originally, when I rated it, my knowledge wasn't really, it does criticise the government as well, but I just couldn't get over the main character. He was so unredeemable, even at the end, especially because he sleeps with a student and he doesn't regret his actions. They try and help him, which I suppose is a criticism of university professors and things like that, and I'm sure he kept referring to himself as Odysseus. And then there was a chapter where he started going on about his play at one point. But yeah, not an enjoyable book. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. As always, my name's Becky. If you want to see more videos from me, hit that subscribe button. So comment down below what you've been reading this month, if you've read any One Piece, if you've actually read any of these books that I've talked about. I'd love to know. So thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.
Caught you at a bad time. The dial tone is like a flat line.